Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books, and I've been covering Disney very closely these last several months. And now the announcement has come: 7,000 employees to be cut from Disney. This is the first massive wave of layoffs. There will probably be other waves, but this is the only official wave of layoffs that have been announced. 7,000 employees to be laid off. But the woke people, the ESG people, don't think this is such a good idea, and they don't think it's fair to employees. Because when you work for a company, why should you have to be productive, right? And you know, in business, sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. When things work out, everybody's doing great. When they don't work out, something has to change. And in the case of these 7,000 employees, they've got to change. They've got to go find something else to do. This is coming from Barron's. The stock market loved Disney's cost cuts. Some ESG critics say it's putting shareholders ahead of workers. That does make sense, right? I mean, in this case, because they put workers ahead of shareholders when they overhired people that they should have never hired in the first place, now that has worked out very badly. The stock price went down by 40%. The company is in big trouble. They need to make severe changes, and they've announced severe changes beyond these layoffs. Massive restructuring in terms of how the whole business works. They had to throw their CEO out. This is not a silly thing. This is like a big serious deal because there are tens of billions and even $100 billion plus at stake. Now, how many employees did Disney hire in 2021 and 2022? Incredibly, Disney increased their employee base by 15.79% from 2021 to get up to 220,000 employees. How did they do that? Who are they hiring? To do what? And was the business really doing that well that they would increase their employee base by 15%? No. So this is why when you start doing stuff like this, you're like, oh, well, let's give everyone opportunities. I love the idea of giving people opportunities. I've always done that as I've run my businesses in the past, and I continue to do it. Always look for new people. It has to make business sense. Otherwise, this is what happens. So let's get into this article. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications and give me a thumbs up. Like many companies, Walt Disney does its best to avoid controversy. But in winning over investors this past week, with plans to cut costs and reinstate its dividend, Disney may have irked investors who consider the company a leader in ESG or environmental, social, and governance investing. In his first earnings call since taking back the reins of Disney, CEO Bob Iger promised $5.5 billion in cost cuts, adding that to achieve that target, the company would be reducing its workforce by approximately 7,000 jobs. He also said the company hoped to reinstate its dividend by the end of the year. The cuts are not expected to affect employees in hourly frontline roles at the theme parks. And just to understand who is actually getting cut, this is another great article I came across. Disney is laying off as Universal is hiring. Bob Iger indicated that Disney would eliminate 7,000 jobs from its workforce to address the challenges that Disney's facing. Okay, the reduction is approximately 3.2% of the roughly 220,000 people that the Walt Disney Company employed as of the start of this fiscal year, according to an SEC filing. Per Disney, the aforementioned cost cuts will be comprised of approximately 50% of marketing people, 3,500 people in how many people do you have in marketing? And you're going to just cut 50% of them? So this was obviously a position that would just be like some entry-level position that they would just give to people for the heck of it. 30% labor and 20% technology procurement and other expenses. The workforce reduction amounts to $750 million in cost savings for the company, meaning that the average annual salary of these positions is probably around $75,000 once you factor in what taxes, insurance benefits, and so forth add to the company's total cost of an employee. To put that into context, the average wages for frontline cast members at Walt Disney World put their annual income at $35,000. So these are not people who are working at the theme parks. These are people who are working at the offices in quote, marketing, end quote, positions, labor positions, technology procurement. I mean, positions that they apparently did not actually need. These sound like paid internships. Look, if the company doesn't need you, you can't be there. You can't just get paid internships. Analysts applauded, and the markets liked the initiative, sending Disney's stock up more than 8% in after-hours trading. But the changes also exposed the company to criticism that it's prioritizing one constituency, shareholders, at the expense of another. Iger is also one of Hollywood's most highly paid CEOs. He'll receive an annual base salary of $1 million and a long-term incentive award with a target value of $25 million, highlighting another controversy, a wide gap between CEO and worker pay. The signal that Disney is sending with the layoffs is that they are seeking to be more efficient, but at the same time, they have a CEO with exorbitant pay. I mean, you have to think about it. Why is Bob Iger even taking a paycheck in the first place? Well, because, he's got a lot of responsibility and trouble as the CEO. He may as well get paid for actually being the CEO. Though a lot of these problems were Bob Iger's fault, he was not contractually required to fix these problems, so they had to hire him to bring him back. That contrast of high CEO pay versus layoffs isn't only controversial, but a slap in the face of workers, says Paul Herman, founder and CEO of HIP Investor, a California-based sustainability ratings data and analytics provider. HIP stands for Human Impact Plus Profit. Some say the optics of pursuing a cost-cutting program alongside increased dividends is awkward from an ESG perspective, especially when coupled with high CEO pay, a favorite target of say-on-pay shareholder proposals. Herman says Disney's CEO-to-worker pay ratio was 644-1, according to its 2022 proxy statement, which is above average versus its peers. Netflix, for example, is 202-1. Paramount Global, which includes CBS and Viacom, is 212-1. Iger isn't Hollywood's highest paid CEO, though. That title may go to Warner Bros. Discovery chief David Zaslav, whose total compensation of $246.6 million in 2021 would have put Warner's CEO to worker pay ratio at 2,972-1. But Zaslav is really good, that's the difference. Disney does score well in other areas of corporate social leadership. Herman points out that Disney is a leader in gender diversity for employees and has been supportive of the LGBTQ community, especially in the controversy with Florida on Don't Say Gay, where Disney ultimately supported employees. Well, of course, Disney did ultimately support the employees that complained about Florida's law that would protect children. They didn't support the employees that didn't agree with Disney doing that. Compared with media peers, Disney scores 98 out of 100 points on a scale that balances everything from people to planet to trust, says Herman. They're a leader in their industry. Against the broader universe of 11,000 companies globally, however, Disney's HIP rating is 61. Its CEO-to-worker pay ratio brings down its rating, Herman says. Would it really be a better company if Bob Iger just said, okay, I'll take half the money. I don't care. He's a multimillionaire anyway. What's the difference to him? But then how would that help anyone? Other ESG scorekeepers also rank Disney high. MSCI, the largest ESG rating company, gives Disney an A or average rating among 68 peers in media and entertainment, deeming the company a leader on corporate governance, human capital development, and privacy and data security. Disney declined to comment but referred Barron's to comments Iger made on the earnings call. While this is necessary to address the challenges we're facing today, I don't make this decision lightly, he said, and I'm mindful of the personal impact of these changes. One anti-ESG activist welcomed Disney's focus on shareholders, Vivek Ramaswamy, who is brilliant. Co-founder and executive chair of Strive Asset Management, says tougher economic times expose companies like Disney for virtue signaling when times are good. Whatever the Mouse House does, it seems there's always a critic in the wings. Well, of course, everyone knows Disney, but Disney has done a lot of stuff for them to be held out for criticism. Vivek Ramaswamy also wrote a very important letter. I covered his entire letter in a separate video, accusing Disney of mismanaging themselves because they really had no financial business and no financial stake in taking on Florida's laws that they were passing. They didn't affect the company really whatsoever. So Vivek was one of the activist investors that took them on. He is no multi-billionaire. He is worth a couple of $100 million, so he was an investor, but not as big a deal as, say, Nelson Peltz or Dan Loeb. Now, interestingly, on the Don't Say Gay fix, which was Governor Ron DeSantis getting control of Disney's self-governing district, creating a new era of accountability. Dispute with Disney came down to Disney officially saying, hey, look, as a company, we're going to fight Florida on its laws, even after people resoundingly said that they want this law protecting children. So not everyone agrees with the law, and that's understandable. But the problem with this was Disney had this Reedy Creek district, which was kind of like more than a government. It was its own government where it controls Walt Disney World, and it controls a lot of acres. It's 25,000 acres of Florida land. This was a deal that was made back in the 1960s to help Florida and Disney work out a deal where it would be very lucrative and beneficial for Disney to be able to do what they wanted to do with their own theme park. When Disney went out and started going after the state government of Florida and laws that were officially passed by the Florida state legislature and said they're going to continue to fight Florida law and fight against the people of Florida, that's a big conflict. So DeSantis and his people really identified and said, you know something, we actually don't need to allow Disney to exist as its own private government in Florida, and they challenged the law that created the Reedy Creek District, which was their private government. This is a spokesman from the DeSantis team, and he said this: Florida is beginning a new era of accountability and transparency. Griffin said that the prior agreement, in which a legislative decision in the late 1960s gave Disney the sole control over their district, so over their own little private county, was insufficiently accountable to Florida voters. Disney could say and do what they wanted to do, and that's fine. But when you're operating literally as a government, like essentially a private county government inside the state of Florida, how could you not be accountable to voters? You know, how could you just say, like, look, we're going to do what we want in this private county. We're going to attack the state's laws. We're going to fight the state with all our resources. And they have a lot of resources, Disney. They could have done other things. They decided to back off from the fight. But it really actually doesn't make sense. It's one thing if you're an elected county government or an elected state government, and then the people decide, you know what, we don't like this government. We want to hold them accountable. Get the bums out, as they say. So then you vote for someone else and then government changes. Well, that wasn't the case with the Reedy Creek District. The Reedy Creek District was going to be there forever and was going to be privately owned and controlled and ruled over by a corporation. That was until DeSantis said, hey, no, this is not good. So ultimately the change is this: DeSantis gets to pick the board members, so the state government of Florida is going to control the decision making to some extent. Although I'm sure they will be cooperative and try to do good business with Disney, Disney is not going to be able to do whatever they want without having any kind of accountability to the actual human citizens that live in Florida that could say, I want to get rid of my current government. I want to vote them out. You couldn't do that in the past with Reedy Creek. Now you can do it with this new district. And I think that's great. Let me know what you think of that in the comments below. I mean, that is democratic. That is the way that the United States is supposed to be running. Well, let me know what you think of all this, though, in the comments below. Did you think that the ESG people would come out of the woodwork and start saying, hey, you can't lay people off just because you're not making money? What do you think these people were doing? I mean, we know what portion the layoffs are, but how is it that in the pandemic, like, Disney went ahead and hired 15.79% more people? Another, what is that, 30,000 people? What are you doing? To do what? I'd love to know. I mean, half of these layoffs are in marketing? So it's just basically marketing positions are a joke at Disney? I don't understand it. This is bad business. No wonder they've been talking about doing layoffs. So definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I really like to read them. I appreciate your comments. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.